you were putting your papers in archive that you were creating data, but you weren't. Then they go into a bunch of topics for a bunch of subtasks. They annotated 45 of them for the understanding task. They had 14 participants, but if you're a math person, they want to talk to you because they're not, already done. They're still taking participants. Okay. Now, what about the medicine people? So, the problem with the medicine people is that somebody comes along and they say, on Tuesday I had a toe ache, and it's because I kicked the door. They get these health reports, right? And that's fine, but I'm the one that kicked the door, and if I'm the Secretary of State of the United States, you're going to read about it in the newspaper, right? So we got to kind of remove the name of the people, but it's not good enough to remove their name if we have their age and their place of birth and everything else about them. So we have to de-identify them. And then once we don't know who it is, we want to know what they had, right? So that we can start figuring out how to put cohorts together for a study or something like that. Okay, and this same thing that people are doing in the track medical track, but the track medical track had stopped because the records they were using, the requirements for privacy kept increasing to the point where they're being kept private from the researchers. Right? Okay, so anyway, that ended the medical track. But the Japanese came up with a clever idea. What they do is just go make people sick, then they pick up their data. But they're not real people, right? They just imagine a sick person, write their medical record, so they have some doctors do that, and then they can go in and tag them. Now, that's probably not a good thing to do in the second year. It's a brilliant thing to do in the first year because it gets community, right? This is all about community. Okay. So anyway, they got 4,000 sentences written by some doctors. They got a bunch of companies involved, and they're off trying to do markup like this. So this is really challenging because it's in Japanese. So they've got all this, and they want to know that's a time, and that's a time, and here are these codes that refer to different kinds of conditions and different kinds of treatments and stuff like that. Okay? All right. Now, those are pilot tests. This is the real thing. This is a continuous task. This is the most interesting task at NTCIR, right? And it's a plain, ordinary task of a standard kind. So machine translation evaluation, we go out and we get a bunch of documents in one language, in the other language, we learn from them, we build a system, we generate some output, we hope for the best. We measure how well we're doing. Patent machine translation. But they're translating patents. Well, nobody else in the world is translating patents. But it turns out that patents are naturally occurring parallel text because as soon as I patent something in Japan, I can practice that invention in Japan. Anybody can practice that invention anywhere because I've made it public. And it's only protected in Japan. So I have to run off and patent it in the United States. And I have to go patent it in India. I got patented in all these places. And so I put a reference in my patent that tells you, here are all the other versions of this patent. Oh, isn't that brilliant? So this is unique evaluation data for machine translation. For language pairs, we couldn't build these large collections for. So, what's interesting about this is every top machine translation system in the world participates in this evaluation. Right? This is not a Japanese evaluation. Right? This is the world's patent machine translation evaluation. But this started out as a Japanese IR thing. Where did this come from? Well, it came from the fact that one of the things they worked on was patents. So they got a real specialized expertise in patents. And then there were some translation people. And then they built this, and they got the whole world came. Okay, so that's a nice example. And they do intrinsic evaluation, but they also do extrinsic evaluation because they're hanging with the IR people. The IR people are like, so what? You got a blue score of 36.247. I got a blue score of 36.248. Right? And they're like, does it make any difference to the patent examiner? So what do? Out a bunch of patent examiners and actually look at these things, right? Okay. And that's only because they're at NTCIR, where people care about information access, not about blue scores. Well, they care about blue scores. Okay. Anyway, so they've got some really useful parallel corpora that says extrinsic evaluation, and 20 groups from around the world submitted results to this already. Right? It's the same. home. Don't do it this way. This is the world's only lecture collection for speech retrieval. It's the only one that's ever been built. Right? But guess what? It's in Japanese. So, guess who's participating? All the people who build Japanese speech retrieval systems. Well, it turns out very few terrorists are Japanese, so there's nobody in America building a system for Japanese, right? So as a result, everybody working on this is in Japan. Now, there are really good people in Japan, but this is the kids around the table all talking to each other again, but now they're doing it at NTCIR. They go to the Japanese Speech Processing Society to talk to each other about this. Okay, so nonetheless, you want to do lectures, this is the place, and you got to learn Japanese. So they're doing spoken term detection. I told you about that earlier. That's where somebody says information retrieval someplace in one of their lectures, and we're going to find it. Right? Doesn't matter what they meant. What it matters is, did they say that? And they're also doing, and they're also supposed to find out if you didn't say it. And the other thing is they're doing ordinary spoken content retrieval at the level of entire lectures and at the level of passages so that you can see if people are talking about what they're talking about. Here, by the way, I'm sure. All right, so they got lots of Japanese. Lots of them. And they got lots of people. Okay. This has the best acronym. Remember I told you? Good acronym, get twice as much funding, right? These people got the right acronym. Got it, good. Okay, so this was a case where they had a parking lot conversation with somebody that said, this is really important to the nation, we ought to do this. And what the parking lot conversation was about Japanese students are having a hard time passing the entrance exams into Japanese universities. So they wanted to make a machine that could take the entrance exam and pass it. Frankly, I think this says something about the entrance exam, but this is a beautiful problem because you can walk up to somebody and say, I made a machine that passed the entrance exam, and they know exactly what you did because they took it, right? And they paid attention when they were doing it. So this is the kind of thing that grabs your society. This is Watson playing Jeopardy, right? And so that's what they're doing. In fact, I think they saw Watson play Jeopardy, and they thought, well, let's try this, right? So this is Watson speaking Jeopardy. So, for example, you're supposed to be able to, for the basic problem, read this thing and then answer the question, is that person the writer of that thing? All right? That's the kind of thing you have to do. You have to do it in Japanese and Chinese, or Chinese. So they have a whole lot of tasks. The first one is solve the problem, right? But since nobody can solve the problem, they have a whole lot of smaller tasks. And since nobody can actually solve the smaller tasks yet, they have even smaller tasks. So they built a whole task hierarchy that if you solve all the tasks from the bottom up, you solve the problem, right? And so the task is to find out if one thing implies something else, or if each implies the other, which means they're paraphrases, right? Or if one thing contradicts something else, or something else. No. Anyway. Now, the PC chair proposed this task, one click, and then selected it. So it's a really good proposal, right? Okay, no. There are two PC chairs, so one of the PC chairs can do this, and the other one can say yes or no. So here's the problem. All this information retrieval stuff over here is nonsense. Let's just type in the query and get the answer. All right? So this says, forget the information retrieval. The real problem is question answering. You had some question, let's get you an answer. Now that's not really so hard. I mean, it's impossible to do, but it's not so hard to say. But it's hard to say what it would mean to do that well. I mean, if I give you some complicated question, what's an answer? Well, an answer is a good summary that tells me everything I need to know. Well, good. What would that be? I mean, there might be different levels of granularity of what I might need to know. I might need to know something different than you need to know. So this is an evaluation. It's not about the system you're building. It's about the evaluation measure you're designing, right? And what they are focused on is what everybody else calls nuggets, but if you call what you're working on the same thing somebody else calls what they're working on, well, then it's not new. So they're called I units. Information units, right? Like iSchools. Okay. So these I units are different from nuggets because with nuggets, it's just where it is. With an I unit, or just what, whether I got the nugget or not. With an I unit, it's where it is in the document, right? So I have to get my I unit up near the top of my summary. Anyway, they got lots of people coming to do their thing, so they got 34 runs submitted already. In English, 25 in Japanese. Note, more submissions in English than in Japanese, thus proving the people who are doing Japanese speech are giving up more than half the market, probably, right? You don't want to just do internal things. You want to do things that appeal internally and externally, so as to bring the right people into the room to work on a problem. Okay, and then they also, we talked about this last time, they do diversity ranking, but you can't call it diversity ranking because call it diversity ranking, Trek's already doing that, so they need another name, so they call it intent. Right? They try to figure out what your intent was, but that's really what diversity ranking is doing. And they have a big complicated diagram here, which will tell you how it works, and results. It's December. These results are going to be reported in June, and they have results plotted, right? Okay, gives you an idea that they're ahead of the game. Okay, and then last, a bunch of people look at Wikipedia and they say, what if it didn't have all those links? Maybe we could just put them back in. So they go get some Wikipedia, they take the links out, and they train on a bunch of Wikipedia pages with links, and they try to guess where they be, and guess where they link to. And of course that's nice because the training data is easily available. But then the problem is, well, I don't actually want to do that because Wikipedia already has links. I want to build links to pages in other languages that I don't have a page in this language for, right? So I got the Bengali Wikipedia and I got some link out to some English page. Well, wouldn't that be nice, right? So that's what Crosslink is about, and they got 17 teams off doing that. Okay, now, I promised I would tell you what NTCIR means. The National Institute of Informatics was originally born as a science information service called the National Center for Science Information Systems, and they created an evaluation called the NACSIS Test Collection for Information Retrieval. But then NACSIS went away and NII came along, and that's NII is a university kind of a thing, a government research center, so they needed a new name, and so they became the NII Test Collection for, it's almost like JASIS, if anybody's followed all the ACES renamings, right? Except they actually changed their acronym once. These people did it 3 times. And then what happened was the young kids came along, the young Turks, the PC chairs, and they're like, gotta invent something new, otherwise we're not changing anything, right? I mean, what's the sense of being here if we can't change things? Any of you work for somebody like that? Okay, anyway, so they invented a new name, which is the NII Testbeds and Community for Information Access Research, which you will be happy to see has the same acronym, so they don't need new letterhead. Okay. I'm happy to take questions if you'd like a ride to the airport with me.
In the first slide.
You're going to try to get me to pronounce those names?
No.
Okay.
Because
I actually had to send to Japan to get that slide made.
I was also told that there is another acronym of NTCIR. It's Noriko's Text Collection for Information Retrieval.
Very good. So Noriko is one of the 3 original, for those who don't know the story.
Angels.
Yes, there were the Charlie's Angels, right? The 3 angels who started all of these evaluations. And Mandar came along and finally proved that a man could also do this. Other questions?
Yeah, I just saw that you can see the Japanese names
Yeah.
are perhaps written in a different script.
You can see what?
The Japanese names,
Yes.
the first four,
Yes.
are written in a different script,
Yes.
and the last two in a different one.
Yes.
Oh, is that, am I right? Or
Yeah, of course you're right. You can see it. You want me to explain it?
on the way to the airport?
I'll give you the short version. The Japanese have 3 character sets. One of them is called kanji. Those are the characters used for the first 4. So if you're born in Japan, you get some kanji. That's your name. And how you pronounce it, well, you know, that's the foreigners are going to have to figure that one out. The Japanese people can all understand it. And so the native form of a Japanese name is in kanji, and it's written in what are strangely Chinese characters, because the Chinese and the Japanese, as you probably know, get along so well. Okay, so the problem was that Admiral Perry sailed the ship, you know, into the harbor and said, "Hi, we're going to be friends, whether you like it or not." You might have heard stories like this before. And that was the so-called opening of Japan. And all of a sudden, they had to be able to write down other people's names, like Admiral Perry, right? Because Admiral Perry didn't have any kanji characters. So they have this other sounded out alphabet. So if you're a kid, you learn the sounded out alphabet first, and then later you learn all those Chinese characters. And so that's katakana. And it's a kind of a kana. That's a katakana. I don't know what that means actually, but I do know there's another kana, which is called hiragana. Apparently they don't really care too much about the J's and G's. But anyhow, hiragana is used for morphology. So if you really want an easy morphology problem, you simply do Japanese, and every time they switch from kanji to hiragana, you go, "Wah!" and you got it, right? And so there are all of these sort of access points. But Japanese isn't unique in that Korean has case markers all over the place because, well, the Koreans could never decide what order to write their words in, so they just case mark the whole thing so that you can make sense of it. And then there's a canonical order that's not case marked, but you can just go pull all the case markers, and they're really easily identified, and go whack, and you've taken care of a lot of morphology. So the East Asian languages are interesting, except for Chinese, which doesn't have any of this. The Chinese people just write Chinese characters, and everybody else seems like they have to acknowledge it.
So anyone else going to the airport? Okay. So I think we can break for tea.
Yeah, it seems that Japanese government gives.
Touche.
Yes, NTCIR gives double amount of research money if you have unpronounceable acronym.
You know, that's actually true. So while I was preparing this, I got an email from the NTCIR office that said, "We have a little extra money around. If any of you tasks need some extra money, just let us know." So yes, the Japanese apparently do reward unpronounceable acronyms, but only if they're written in the 4th character set, which they call romanji. I kid you not.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.